Hello and welcome to this week's Easy 11 Plus live lesson on non-verbal reasoning. And yes, I do agree with Bobo, who wrote in the comments a little bit earlier, NVR not awesome. It's not my favourite thing either, but let's see whether we can make it at least a little bit interesting today. If you find this video useful and perhaps a little bit interesting, please remember to like it and to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Easy 11 Plus is live every Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock in this channel, except that I am going to be on holiday for the next 2 Tuesdays after today. And that means that I'm going to be posting some pre-recorded videos in this channel at 6 o'clock next Tuesday and the Tuesday after. So please look out for those, but they won't be live. As always, the worksheet for today's lesson is linked in the video description, which is down here on YouTube and up here on Facebook, along with lots of other useful links, including some free things. Whew, I need to breathe. And I think that's about all I need to say for now, so let's get started. So we're going to start with some rotations, because that's absolutely classic NVR. Now, I want to start off by saying about rotations that people always start out by trying to turn the images upside down in their mind to see them the right way. And if you're really good at doing that, if you've got really good spatial, a really good spatial imagination, then that works fine. But for most of us, and I do count myself in this, that isn't a very easy way to do things. And what I want to think about instead is looking at the details of an image and how they might change, and using that to rule out, to eliminate options that can't be correct before we get into the chaos of trying to rotate everything at once. So let's see. Let's ignore the example and let's go on to the first question here, question 1. So we've got an image on the left here, and we have to rotate that and choose which of the options on the right is a correct rotation. Now immediately you'll notice this over here, which looks identical, and you'll think that's probably the answer, and it may well be, but always be aware that examiners are horrible people and they have a tendency to set traps. So be on the lookout for alternatives that might be a better match, or for details that might not be quite right in the answer that you think is correct. Let's have a quick glance at option A here. So A, if we imagine turning that, we can see it looks pretty similar, but looking at details, look at this here. That's pointy. Let's find the same place on the original image, and that's rounded. So we can actually see that this is not a precise match. Let's look at B. Well, if you turn B round a little bit, we can see that this thing here is pointing anti-clockwise, whereas on the original image it's pointing clockwise. So B has actually been reflected somewhere along the line. It's not right. Looking at C, look at this line here. Where's that? We can see that it's running down from the bottom towards the tail, I guess you could say, across the thing there, something like this. So that's in the wrong place. So C is also incorrect. And so yes, D looks right, and it is right. Now I know that in an exam you might be minded to save time, and you might say, well, D is so obviously the correct answer. It's been rotated either no degrees or 360 degrees or 720 degrees or something. And yeah, if you're really confident, you can select it. But it's still good to have the eliminating mentality in mind. Someone's written D is a bit bigger than the original, right? I don't think so. But sometimes the answers will be a slightly different size to the original. Maybe there could be a printing error. I think we can see that all the answers here are at least the same size as each other. I'm not sure that D is bigger than the original. I'm not sure you're right about that, but someone can get out their measuring tape and check. Let's have a look at question 2 here. We're just looking at a few of each kind of question here. We're not going to do gazillions of rotations, as you'll have gathered already if you've worked on the worksheet, as of course you all have before this lesson. Right, so question 2 here. Again, we're going to be looking at details. These all look really similar, don't they? But again, let's look at A. And if there's one skill to really get good at here, it's spotting the little details that might be a bit different straight off. So on the original, we can see a few little details. We can see this thing poking out here. We can see this, whatever you call it, this little bite out there, and this little bite down here. So let's compare those. The thing pointing out the top looks pretty similar on A. But what about the bite over here? There isn't one. We have that here, but there's nothing here in A. So that one cannot be right. Get rid of that so it's a bit clearer to see for the rest. Looking at B, well, looking at B, this one does look pretty similar to me. So let's bear that in mind as a possibility. There's nothing obvious to rule it out. Let's move on to C. Because what we want to do to start with is just move quite quickly, get rid of all the ones that can't be right before we get too lost in the details of checking the ones that we think are right. That comes at the end, and that's an important bit of exam technique when you're eliminating options. C, we'll look at the knobble on the top there. It's tiny compared to this one here, so this is clearly not correct. Looking at D over here, well, D also looks pretty similar. What's this? It looks pretty similar. This looks pretty similar. What's going on up here? So let's look at this and then let's compare to this over here. Well, actually, if we look at D, we can see that there's very little space here between the knobble and the right-hand side of the shape, whereas over here there's a good, decent gap. So D doesn't look right either. So we're left with B as the only possibility. And we've already established that B looks fine. There's nothing obviously wrong with it. So both of these questions, question 1 and question 2, that we haven't spent a great deal of time actually rotating the pictures. Of course, you have to rotate them in your mind a little bit to see, for example, that this bobble there is the equivalent of this bubble here, but that's fairly straightforward. What we've really spent our time on is looking at details such as the bubble here is too short, or such as that this I don't know what you want to call it, but that sort of junction of lines there is sharp, whereas here there's a continuous smooth curve. And we focused on those things rather than trying to turn ourselves upside down and do crazy magic rotating the exam paper. So that's a useful tip to bear in mind, I hope. Okay, on to the next. By the way, I'd like to take a moment for a bit of what you could call housekeeping. Somebody got in touch after the last week saying something that I know a lot of people have been thinking in the comments and so on, which is that there are some people who have a tendency to put it bluntly, spam the comments, by which I mean that they post the same comment again and again and again and again and again and again and again. There's someone called Jay at the moment who's put B 4 times that I can see. Please don't do this. Please, if you've got a comment, just post it once. Yes, I know there's a risk then that I won't see it, but it's so annoying for everybody else if the comment thread is just eaten up by the same comment endlessly and they can't get a word in. And then when one person starts spamming, other people feel they have to start spamming to get noticed, and it becomes Spam Tuesday. So please, no spamming in the comments. Thank you very much. Love you all. Right, on to question 3 here. So we're looking at top-down representations of 3D shapes. Now this looks really tricky, but actually you can do these just by being very systematic, even if you don't have a really outstanding sense of 3D spatial awareness. Let me show you how. What we're going to do, rather than worrying too much about the whole image, in the same way that we did with the rotation, we're going to focus on one detail at a time. So looking at the original figure on the left, we can see that there's one cube here that sticks out the front. We can see that these here are on the same vertical plane and they are behind that one cube that sticks out. So any answer that viewed from above, because these are all potential views from above of the figure, any possible answer that doesn't have one cube sticking out the front is going to be wrong. And here we can see A has got 2 sticking out the front, not 1, so it's wrong. So we can rule out A straight away. Okay, that's eliminated. Next thing to say, you could focus on pretty much anything. Let's focus on basic things to start with. This is 1, 2, 3 cubes in width from left to right. We can see that C is 4 in width, so C is wrong. So some really simple things have reduced us to 2 options already, which makes our life a lot easier. Okay? Right. Now looking at D over here, we can see there's 1 poking out the back. Now looking at the original, I can see no evidence of a cube down there or up here poking out the back, and I should be able to see that. So I'm pretty certain already that D is not correct. But just in case I've missed something, let's say for example that there's one hidden somewhere down behind that we can't quite see, that could be this one here in D. Let's find some other evidence. Another thing about D is that we can see that there are 2 on the left here. Now looking at the original, we can see 1 cube on the left, and there's nothing to be seen down here or up here behind anywhere to show another cube there, and we would be able to see it at least a little bit. So D is just not correct, and B is the only option that really fits the original figure. So again, just like with the rotations, I've taken one aspect at a time, compared the original figure with the top-down plans, and I've used those details to eliminate options, rather than either A, trying to think about the whole figure at once and solve it, or B, trying to jump straight to the answer. JV, please stop spamming by writing B lots of times. I know you're being funny by doing what I said not to do, but please don't. It's just annoying for everybody. And you don't want to see me when I'm angry. You probably do. It would be hilarious and ineffectual, especially on a live stream. Anyway, next question. So, what have we got here? So we can see, what are our key features going to be? Well, we can see that this is 4 wide. 1, 2, 3, 4. But all the answer options are 4 wide, so that doesn't help us. How deep is it? Well, that's actually a bit tricky, but let's count that. So we've got 1 at the front here. We now then got a row behind it here. We'll call that 2. There's 1 behind that, 3. There are these here, 4, and there are these 2 at the back, 5. So it's 5 deep. Only one of the answer options is 5 deep. That's D here. So in fact, D must be our answer. Now let's say you didn't spot that, and to be honest, it's quite hard to count the depth of this figure on the left. What else could we look at? Well, the figure has got, let's do a bit of rubbing out to make this clearer. It's got, let's zoom in a bit to make this super evident. You see it's got a block here in between this row and this row. So zooming back out, the magic of technology. So we can see that only D has that block in it. None of the others have that. So that's another reason why D has to be right. So this is quite a difficult figure on the left, but actually it's got some details in it that make it really straightforward to find the answer. Big congratulations to everybody who posted D. Apart from Subramaniam, who posted D several times. No spamming, please. On to the next one. Question 5. So, wow, what we got here? We got some kind of, it's like one of those balloon dogs that people make at fun fairs. I can imagine the head up here and the tail back here. Anyway, it's not a balloon dog. It's a very serious non-verbal reasoning problem. Let's do the same basic things. Let's count from left to right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 5 from left to right. But all the answer options are 5 from left to right. So that is no use to us at all. That was a complete waste of time. What else can we think about? On the left here, we can see the shape. We've got block here, then we got, that's that one, then we got this block here that's like this, and then we got these 2 here that are like this. Look at my beautiful sketching. So we need, and we can see that the blocks above are directly on top, by the way, so they're not going to change that shape. So we need something which has that shape in it. A does, B does not. C does, and D does. Okay, that's ruled out B. That's the start. But where else can we go from here? Let's look at this bit up here. Again, let's try the same thing. We can see that there are these 3 blocks here. So let's sketch those. Art. You're seeing art history being made here. This block here comes off the middle one. And this block here is in this gap. Okay? So we're going to have that shape there, and we can see there's nothing in this gap here. There's nothing there. So A isn't right, but D and C both have that shape. So now we've got to choose between D and C. And this is where it gets a bit tricky, because we've got to work out whether the join happens here or whether it happens here. So we're going to have to look very, very closely at the original figure. Let's do some rubbing out so it's a bit easier to do that. Right, okay. So where does it join? So let's start drawing some lines up here. So this comes up here, like that. This comes up. So it's pretty clear that it is meeting up, if you look at it from above, with that block sort of next to it like this. If it was going to be like D with that gap, all this stuff here would slide forwards towards us, which would mean that it would look slightly further left in the figure. This is a really tricky, really subtle difference, and it wouldn't surprise me if you got this wrong in a test. It's a really, really difficult one, but the answer is C, and you really have to think about perspective there as you look at it. Okay, let's go on. Same lesson there, really. Same thing I've said already. Don't get caught up in trying to solve the whole thing. Look at a detail at a time and use those details to eliminate, and then finally to make a positive decision about your answer. Right, okay, pattern spotting. The figure that is most unlike the other options in its row. So these can be really tricky, or they can be simpler. So there are lots of possible patterns that there might be. Let's just start by looking at the really obvious things. Are these all the same kind of star? Yes, they are. Do they all have a straight line in them? Yes, they do. Are all the lines similarly dotted? Yes, they are. So what else could there be? Well, I suppose it's about what the lines divide or what they meet up with. So if I look at A, you've got the line joining two corners, vertices, angles, whatever you want to call them, here. B, it goes from a corner point there to the middle of an edge over here. C, corner to corner. D, corner to corner. E, corner to corner. So there's only one option here where the line actually meets in the middle of an edge, and that's option B. So this must be our answer. Now, 7 here I've included, even though, and I say this as the person who wrote it, I actually, with hindsight, think this is a really bad question because it's pretty confusing, and I actually think, as I look at it again, that there might be more than one possible rule here. But I've left it in, I'm going to talk about it, because you might encounter a problematic question in an exam. It does happen. So when you get a question like this, it's really awkward. How do you work through it? Someone's posting about whether lines are diagonal, whether shapes are diagonal in this. I think that's not likely to be a good route to go down, because nothing here, pretty much nothing, is exactly side to side or up or top to bottom. They're pretty much all slightly slanted, so it'd be hard to draw a distinction there. But it is a good basis in which to think. What could we think about? We could think about the order of things. So A, you've got, going from front to back, white, grey, black, dark grey. Next one, you've got dark grey, black, light grey, white. Then you've got C, light grey, dark grey, black, white. Next one, you've got dark grey, white, black, light grey. And next one, you've got white and dark grey at the front, then black, then light grey. Is there any kind of pattern in that? Let's think about it. So saying it out loud, that might have helped drawn something to your attention. I keep on saying the word black second to last, except when I'm looking at option B, where I said black second, because it was dark grey, black, light grey, white. All the others have black second from the back. And so that's a pretty good indication that B is the odd one out. Now, I think there were some really confusing elements here, because you can go through this and you could spend ages counting the sides and all the shapes, and it occurred to me that you could actually make a case for E, because you could say that E is the only one where there isn't a clear front shape, because this shape and this shape are equally at the front and don't overlap each other. So I think if you chose E, I think you should actually give yourself a mark for that. Sometimes questions are just badly written and confusing, but you still have to be systematic and work through them as best you can and not get panicked by them, because at the end of the day, you still want that mark. So bear that in mind. But I also apologise for writing a pretty dodgy question. Okay, what have we done with these? So the first thing I've done, which I think is the most important thing to say here, is that I've approached this with an open mind. In other words, I haven't plunged in saying, this must be the rule that I'm looking for. I've just gone through describing each shape to myself. I've done it out loud because I'm talking to you. In an exam, I would still do the same thing, but I'd be describing the shapes to myself in sort of, mental language. So going through saying, so we've got a dotted line. Is that the same in all of them? Talking about option question 6 here. Yeah. Same star? Yeah. Okay. So what do the lines meet? Okay, corner to corner, corner to side, corner to corner, corner to corner. So B is the odd one out. And then with 7, I thought there could be lots of things here. So I have gone through different possibilities. And when I've looked at the order of colours from front to back, or back to front, that's when I found the pattern. But I've kept an open mind, I've tried things, and I've tried to look for overall tendencies and the exceptions to them. It's tricky. One last thing that I'd like to say about question 7 is that you'd be likely to look at this question in an exam and go, whoa, that looks really difficult. And if that happens, if you've got a paper exam, this is the kind of question for which I would advise you, before you start wasting any time on it, to write some kind of mark next to it, something like, you might write something if my pen worked, do a mark like that, any symbol that you recognise that's nice and bold and clear, but doesn't look like an answer, so that you can skip the question, not waste any time on it, and then come back to it at the end of the exam. Because in a reasoning test, almost always, every question is worth 1 mark. So if you waste 5 minutes on one question and you end up missing out 5 other questions because you ran out of time, that's a false economy because you've lost far more marks than you've gained. So unlike perhaps in some maths test where a really difficult question might be worth loads of marks, so it might be worth the time, in a reasoning test, if you can see it's going to waste a lot of time, skip it and come back. I've said that lots of times, but it's really useful advice because when a test gets stressful, you get tunnel vision, like, rabbit in the spotlight, and you can sit there and stare at it and waste loads of time. Don't do that. Don't be the rabbit. Okay, we're flying through here, which is rare for these lessons, I think. So let's keep at it. Right, more pattern spotting, but here you're given a pattern on the left, and you're invited to identify what the pattern might be and then find one on the right that might match it. Now, the tricky thing about these questions is that 2 example figures aren't actually enough to conclusively prove what the pattern might be. So what you need to do is you need to look at the example figures, work out what the likely patterns are, and then look at the possible answers to see which of those patterns might find a match, if that makes sense. So you reach a tentative conclusion, that means a cautious conclusion, based on the figures on the left. Say it might be this, it might be this, and then you check the answers to see which option is actually going to solve the problem for you. Now 8 here, we've got 2, we can call them ovals, oblongs, ellipses, which are overlapping, and we can see that one of them kind of points into the other. It's like it's sort of injecting the other one but not coming out the other side. I don't know, it makes me think of looking at a couple of like cells under a microscope in a biology lab or something like that. Anyway, so that might help us. And what else can we say about these figures? We can say that the 2 ellipses have, each of them has 2 overlap points. 1, 2, 1, 2. So that might not be what we need to work with, but let's see whether we can find an answer that matches based on that. So A wouldn't match most of those rules. Yes, there were 2 ellipses, but they cross in 2 on both sides, and there are 4 overlapping points. B, likewise, 4 overlapping points. C, similarly, even over here where it's only slight, there are still 4 overlapping points, whereas D only has 2. So based on what we found out about these over here, there is only one option that matches the rules that we spotted, so we can be pretty confident in D being correct. Down here, question 9, we've got some crazy squiggles, but let's see what we can make of them. So we've got a line that overlaps itself in various places, and we've got some bits that are coloured in grey and some bits that are left white. So looking at this one here, we can see that there are 3 white areas and there are 3 grey areas. Looking at this one here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 white areas, 6 I suppose if you count this, count this bit here, so no real pattern there. There are 1, 2, 3 grey areas. So could 3 grey areas be our pattern? Nothing else is very obvious. We're not going to be expected to find the length of the line. But what can we do with that? So we look at option A. There are lots of white areas, 3 grey areas. So that could be our pattern. A could be right, but maybe there were some others with 3 grey areas. B, 1, 2, 3, 4 grey areas. C, 1, 2. D, 1, 2, 3. So A is the only one with 3 grey areas. So that does look like our best match. With problems like this, you might not get to a point of absolute certainty, because there may be a great many possible rules that you could find to match just 2 figures if you stared at them for long enough. If you find a likely rule and you find only one match for it on the right hand side, you can be confident enough that you're right to choose that one and move on rather than wasting more time. It's a reasoning exam, but it's a numbers game. Take the likely mark and then move on to get more marks elsewhere. Okay, this is actually the last part of the lesson here. I've set up a different screen share for this so you can see the blocks and the possible answers at the same time, because I think we need that. So you can see that on the screen here I've got the blocks top right and I've got the answers bottom left, and I'll try to stop them hiding each other. If you're watching this on a phone, you won't be able to see these things very well, but what you could do is come back to the lesson later and rewatch this section on a computer so you can properly see what's going on. This is really hard, by the way. Give you fair warning, and if you found this difficult, don't worry about it. Just think carefully about the techniques that I'll be explaining and how you might go about doing it. So, question 10 here. Now, looking at this, it's immediately really difficult. What I see first here, the thing that really jumps out at me, is we've got a kind of T shape here. It could be that this block here is a separate single block, or it could be part of a T, but I can see that T shape in it. So do we see any options in the to select from that include a T shape? Is it showing my... No, it's not showing my mouse pointer, so I can't point. Okay, well, never mind. Looking through this, the only one here with a really obvious looking T shape is C, where you can see at the top right that there's a kind of horizontal T lying on its side. But if you look at the rest of it, it just looks totally different. There's no sign of the long pieces like this or anything like that, so it doesn't seem to fit there. And looking through this, you might well just look through all the options here and say, nothing obviously matches this, I'm really stuck. That's okay. Don't get bogged down. You've got 6 options to choose from and 6 answers. It's almost certain that each option is going to go with one answer, so it'll be easier to choose our answer when we've eliminated some of the others. So let's go on to option 11 and think about that. Is that going to be a little bit easier? So we're turning these round, trying to find the option that fits, and we can see that this one has got the kind of little L on the front and it's got a little L here. We can't really see what's going on in the rest of it, so we can get a sense of the general shape. So where can we find these L's in the pictures here? Well, there's only one shape here that could possibly include several of these L's at sort of different ends like this, and that's option C. You can see a sort of L shape up at the very top right of option C, and the blocks lying on their sides towards the bottom of it could well be L shapes. We can't see the back of them. And simply none of the other options here have space for there to be all these L shapes. As you may have noticed, options B, D and F are all composed of lots of individual single blocks, so we can actually eliminate them straight away. We're looking at A, C and E. And of those, only C makes any sense here. So we can pretty confidently say that this is option C. So you'll notice here that I haven't done a complete turning round of the figure. In fact, I haven't really done any turning at all. I've identified some key elements, and then I've gone around looking for those key elements in the box of options. Just like with the other questions we've been looking at, that's the way to go. And that's why a lot of spatial reasoning is not really all that spatial. You imagine it's about being able to manipulate crazy shapes in your mind, like being able to see the universe through a page of astrophysics equations. It's not really like that. It's just about picking out elements and analysing them one at a time, and that's how we get there. Next one, 12. Okay, so this is lots of single blocks. 13 is lots of single blocks. I'm going to skip on to 15 because this is the other one that includes some bigger shapes that make it up. And if you look at 15, you can see there's this very long thing along here, and there's this L shape here. So what can we find in the box that matches those things? And there's really only one option that suits this, and that's option E. None of the other figures has those elements clearly sitting in it. Now, if you really think about it, you can see that if you take the figure from 15 here, whoopsie daisies, if you take that, and how can I do this? If you pick it up, turn it over, so it's resting that way, and then you turn it around until the tall pole is nearest to you, then you get E. But you don't need to do all that if you find that difficult. You just need to recognize the shape elements and work them into what you're doing. Okay, so that's going to be option E. And now we can go back to the first one, which was very difficult. And we can say we've used C and we've used E, and there's only one other option here. There's only one other option here that isn't composed of single blocks, and that's A. So this must be option A, without us needing to do any detailed work with it, really. The question doesn't specify that it's one-to-one matches, so let's check that to make sure it couldn't be another one for option C or option E. Well, let's particularly this bit here. You see the tall bit there, you've got this shape here. I'm going to rub out a little bit actually so that we can see what I'm drawing. We've got this long L shape here, and we've got this long sort of pole that's 3 high there. And if you look at option A, in fact I'm going to pull down a bit so I can sketch on it, you can see that there's something like possibly a long L along here, and there's also maybe something there. So they seem to match. And then if we imagine turning it over so they're pointing in the right direction, we can start to see that when we look at the T shape here, that might actually be this thing with one poking out the back, if you can see that. It's really tricky, but you can see that A is at least a plausible answer for this. And so we can be pretty sure we've now correctly allocated A, C and E. This is hard. I know it's hard, but I hope what I'm saying is making some sense here. Josh here in the comments, who is spamming relentlessly with the same letter again and again. The worst kind of teacher makes threats. However, I do have the power to block people from commenting and also therefore from the channel. So I'm not going to do that lightly, but if you keep on spamming, it will become a temptation. Please just stop it. Thank you. Right. On to the ones that are just lots of single blocks. So we've got 12, 13, and 14. Now you don't need to do these in order. You can start with what seems easiest. And I really like the look of 13, this one here, because it's got this stairway to heaven or stairway to nowhere going up. Can we spot that anywhere in the single block options? Well, in D, I don't think that we really can. I don't see a sort of stairway to nowhere there. In F, definitely not. Whereas in B, I'm just going to pull this down so I can highlight this on B. You've got 1, 2, 3 here, which, although they aren't exactly they aren't on the same level as each other here, you can see that they step up like that, leading away, and then to nowhere off here. And that's really like what's going on in this case. So we can be confident that's B, because there isn't anything like that area in D or F. 14 is also quite an appealing shape because it's got this kind of horseshoeness. And we're left with D and F at the moment. D could have a little bit of a horseshoe. If you imagine the bit that's running towards the back, how can I do this so it's... I can't work in the wrong direction. So we got going around here. I'm working the wrong direction for you, never mind. Mirrors. But, no, I'm going to have to go to the original to show this. This is my spatial reasoning letting me down. You can see that D goes 3 this way, but only 1, 2 that way. Whereas F has got 3 and a 3. So that 3 and a 3 here matches F. So there's only one that's now left for us, which is D. So we just want to check that 12 does indeed match option D. And in fact, if you just take 12 and you turn it round by 90 degrees that way, and now we are doing a little bit of whole shape rotating, but it just slots in nicely. You can see this row of 3 being like the road that goes from front to back on D, and you can see these 2 here being like the right hand side of D. It all fits quite easily, and so this is answer D. And that's it, we're there. We thought a little bit about how the whole question fits together. We've assumed that there's going to be a one-to-one match, so each of the answers matches one of the blocks up there. But we haven't taken that totally for granted. So we've used that as a principle. We've eliminated things once we've used them and considered what's left. But we've also checked our answers to make sure that they do really make sense. As far as possible, we've looked at details and tried to match them. So for example, option D with the staircase to nowhere that turns up also down in 13 here. We could see that, and that helped us to find that answer without needing to actually completely rotate the shape in our minds, because no other shape had that element. So again, as far as possible, we're looking at elements. We're only rotating whole shapes when we absolutely have to. So it's about being systematic, being calm, and taking one detail at a time. Just like I say with comprehension, with maths, with everything, it's about having clear systems and applying those clear systems in a cool-headed, calm manner. Right, okay, let's move on to this week's, if I can find the jingle. So, lots of people are coming up towards their exams now in September, October and so on, and are quite understandably getting quite caught up in it, maybe a little bit stressed, which I quite understand, although you really don't need to feel stressed. As I often say, if you're someone who's hardworking enough and dedicated enough that you're preparing like you are for the 11 plus exam, you will do really well wherever you go to school, whether or not it's the school of your dreams. So be calm and don't worry, your life will not be made or ruined by how you do in these 11 plus exams. But the tip I wanted to give today is that as you get into this period where the exams are coming close, maybe you're starting to get a bit worried about the things that you still aren't getting right and so on. Maybe you're trying a lot of things. There are lots of clever ideas flying around. People have revision theories. You're coming across interesting revision guides online saying try this, try that, try this clever technique. Trying things out can be good. It can make life interesting. However, don't get waylaid by lots of clever theories and complex ideas. By this point, you will have a clear sense of what works for you. Keep doing the things that work, do them calmly, and accept that improvement comes in a trickle. And don't be distracted from doing the things that work for you by a desperate desire to find some clever method that suddenly adds on 10%. Be calm, do the things that work stepwise, and don't get waylaid into trying lots of distracting things by the fact you're in a panic. I'm not going to say slow and steady wins the race because it's a horrible cliche and often it isn't true. But the people who work calmly and do what works and accept small improvements week by week are likely to be the people who perform at their best when the exams come around. Okay, it's going to be questions in a second. There's a time delay in me seeing your comments of about 30 or 40 seconds. So I'm giving you notice now with this bit of waffle to start posting your questions in the comments. Because, of course, it's time for... Okay. I'm just going to have a quick scroll back through the comments to see whether the questions that people have already posted that I can answer before your new questions come through. Strawberry Plays very kindly explains that I do a tip of the week, then do my questions. I am predictable. Oh, there's a question. Fantastic. Is CGP a good 11 plus practice company? Answer my question, Robert. Answer my question, Robert, or else. Yes, they produce lots of really useful materials. Even if they compete with mine, I have to concede they have some very good things. I would say the main difference between what they offer and what I offer is that I offer a lot more in the way of example answers and walk-through explanations of how to answer questions and things like handwritten working for maths and that sort of thing, and lots of example answers for comprehension. I do think that CGP is a really good company to find lots of very realistic exam questions in a wide range of styles for very good value. So yes, I think they're a good company, and I would certainly encourage you to use their materials. Are there some more questions? Yeah, someone says, my birthday's in 3 days and I'm wondering if I should do work on that day. My mum said I don't have to if I don't want to. My exam is so close, just wondering. Have a day off, it's your birthday. Goodness me, if you can't have a day off on your birthday, what's the point of it all? I'm sure that your exam performance is not going to be damaged by that one day off. In fact, more seriously, I'm completely serious, have a day off. But also seriously, the pauses when you stop learning and maybe even forget a little bit are really, really useful for learning. If you're learning a play script or something, maybe some of you have done that at some point, you'll find that if you just practice every day, then it's all working around your short-term memory a lot. And then you stand on stage after rehearsals and maybe you haven't been studying the script as much, and suddenly there are those terrifying faces staring at you, and that's when you can forget it. Whereas if during your learning process you've sometimes taken a week or even a couple of weeks off and let yourself forget a bit and then relearn, you start to get ideas more established in your medium and long-term memory. I don't know why I'm putting it in the back of my head. It's not like that has any particular meaning here, I think. But anyway, neurologists can correct me on that. So yeah, time off learning is really useful. It's really good memory technique, and most certainly on your birthday. What do you do when you have 1 month left? I'm going to repeat my tip of the week here, actually, which is keep doing the things that work. You'll know what they are by now. Other things to say, I've spoken about this a lot, so I'm not going to say everything, but other things to say, keep identifying your weak points and addressing them. Look out for basic core skills that you might not have properly studied. Perhaps you're still making lots of mistakes with, dividing fractions. I've done a video on that, which I'm going to publish in the next couple of weeks, by the way. But anyway, say that dividing fractions, you keep making mistakes. No embarrassment in saying, crumbs, I need to go back to that and just revise that from the basics. So look out for these things. But don't forget your strengths. Keep working on the things you're good at so you can continue to be good at them and not slip back and perhaps become even better at them. In the last month, you're going to introduce more timed practice. I'm not a huge fan of timed practice insofar as I think most people do far too much timed work and not enough slow and thoughtful work. But certainly in the last month, you're going to start doing more timed papers and thinking about what things are slowing you down and working on those. Still, you don't want to time all the time. Maybe one piece of work every 3 or 4 pieces of work might be done with a time limit, and build your time limits up gradually. You don't need to get to exam time straight away. Maybe start with twice exam time, then 1.5 exam time, and so on until you're doing work in exam time. If you find exam time limits easy, lucky you, you could even start doing some practice with shorter time limits than exam time until you're comfortable with those, and then the exam will be a total breeze. Lots of other things you can do in the last month. Those are a few thoughts. RazTube says, how can I improve on vocabulary and comprehension? Whoa, it's a huge question. On comprehension, I've got loads of videos on comprehension in this channel, and there are lots more coming. I've got several I've already recorded. I'm editing now that I'll be posting in the next couple of weeks. So for comprehension, I just say look at my comprehension videos, and if you want more detailed input, look at my comprehension books, at my 11 Plus Lifeline resources. There is so much on comprehension there that I've already put out there, so have a look at that. Vocabulary learning, the thing I always say about vocabulary is the most important thing is to get really good with the words that you already know, especially if you're in the last month or two before your exams. Learning new vocab at this point is probably not the best use of your time. Learning to use the vocab you already have really well is a much more sensible thing to do with that time that's left. If you're a January exam person, if you've got another half a year left until your exams, you might still be doing some vocabulary learning. In terms of how to do that, it isn't a huge specialism of mine, but I did a Q&A session maybe about 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday evening. If you look that up in the channel, I talk a bit about vocabulary learning in that. It was if you look for the Q&A playlist on the homepage of my YouTube channel, you will find that. Listen to my voice going croaky. Where are you going for holiday? Well, that's a secret so that all my fans don't track me down. Yeah, like that's going to happen. That's for me to know and you to guess. What have we got here? How do you decide which is the most efficient method? Great question. I'm going to assume that you're not just talking about reasoning here. You find which is the most efficient method by trying lots of different methods in your practice, which is one of the reasons I talk about doing lots of slow practice and not always doing fast timed work. Find the methods that work best for you and then learn to develop those methods. It's also important to have a range of different methods and to practice using them so that when you see a question in an exam, you can sort through the options of methods that you've learnt and apply the appropriate one. It's just a matter of practice, and it's a matter of practicing with an open mind, with plenty of time, so that you've got the space to try things and get a sense of what works for you, which is what counts here. Not what works for me, but what works for you. Really good questions today. Thank you. Is there still time to sign up for the ISEB? Almost certainly, yeah. Deadlines depend on the schools. So the ISEB, it's just, I think you're talking about the ISEB pre-test, I would guess, which is the computer test. That's set by schools. Schools' websites will tell you what their deadlines are. Different schools have different deadlines. Lots of schools will take applications. Independent schools you're talking about here, I think, will take applications pretty much right up till the exam. Some of them you have to get in quite early. Some of them you have to sign up on the waiting list before you're born, pretty much. It just depends on the school. The ISEB can also mean the ISEB written 11 plus exams, which are sat in January normally, and that's a different kettle of fish. But again, it's just about applying to the school in time. So the answer to your question is find out what the deadline is to apply for that school. Don't think about the exam itself. Someone's asking a maths question. I might save that for a maths video. Subramaniam, you're spamming. You're just clogging up the comments. I can't read the rest of the comments. Please stop doing it. It's just rude to everybody. Where can I find school catchment area? Oh, yeah, horrible. I think the school's website, possibly the local education authority website, but the school's website is the place to start for that. And if all else fails, you can ask the school and they will tell you. How many hours a day should I study? That's a question I've been asked a lot of times, and I think I've answered a lot of times. But that's not criticizing you, because you may not have watched all my videos. You've probably got a life. But I'm kidding. A life well lived is a life spent watching my Easy 11 Plus videos. How many hours a day should I study? Find a work rate that suits you. How much study helps you to stay fresh, to keep you learning? How much study makes you feel that you're improving and not burning yourself out? That's a question that you can only answer for yourself, and nobody else can answer that for you. I'm sorry. I wouldn't think too much in terms of hours a day, however, because as I said earlier, you're going to want some days off. There are going to be some days you're only going to get 10 minutes 11 plus work done. There are going to be some days where you sit down at 8 in the morning and you love your 11 plus work and you keep going until 5 in the afternoon. There may not be too many days like that, however. Find the balance that works for you. and don't get too wedded to a particular timetable. Ravinder says that he, I think, studies 5 hours a day. Wow, I'm extremely impressed. Just make sure that you don't just end up just working for the sake of working. Don't do the time for the sake of doing the time. Keep your brain active and work in a way that keeps you engaged and learning and thinking. But if you can do that and study for 5 hours, I'm extremely impressed. Brilliant. How do you work on your weaknesses efficiently, from Siddharth? Whoa, that's a serious question. Very interesting question. I'm inclined to cop out a bit by saying what I just said, which is it will depend on you and what study techniques work for you, and that really is the core of the answer. However, I think that the first point is to identify them. And if you can find what your weaknesses are really specifically, that's probably the most important thing that you can do. What do I mean by that? So let's go back to vocabulary we spoke about earlier. Lots of people say, I don't have very good vocabulary. What can I do? And that could mean all kinds of things. And what it often means is not, I need to learn another 5,000 words. In practice, what it often means is that you're not as good as you might be at fishing into the words that you know and finding the most useful words. And so really good practice with things like creative writing exercises and that kind of thing can help you to do that. Word games can help you with that. So that's an example of where you've got the sense, I've got bad vocabulary, but when you realize the problem is actually accessing the words you already know, then you can find ways to address that. If someone says that, I always get, here's one I'm always talking about because it applies to so many people. Someone says, I'm always making little silly mistakes in long multiplication and long division. I'm bad at these things. And they respond to it by just practicing long multiplication and long division loads, and it doesn't get better. But that's because they haven't realized the reason why they're making the mistakes is that they've got dodgy times tables. So they make little mistakes along the way. So the solution wasn't to practice long multiplication a gazillion times. It was to go back to what they were doing a few years ago and relearn their times tables really thoroughly. So again, it's about not just spotting the big problem, long multiplication, I make mistakes, but spotting the problem within that, which is the times tables. I think that's probably the most important thing for working on your weaknesses. Someone says, do I do mock papers for coming exams? So I've lost who said that. I apologise, but someone did ask that on a previous page of comments. I have lots of practice papers in lots of styles. Whether they match your particular exam, I'm not sure. If you really want to know, you can always send me an email and I'll do my best to help. In general, my resources are focused on the exam skills rather than always trying to exactly imitate a precise kind of exam. And to be honest, I don't think that just doing endless practice on exact exam copycats in your style is a very good way to practice, and I wouldn't spend too much time on that if I were you anyway. How important is NVR? Well, it's really important if you have to do it in your 11 plus exam, and it's rather less important if you don't. I don't know, it's not important for life, in my opinion. I think it's a pretty massive waste of time. If you've watched the videos before, you'll know that's my opinion. But it's very important for passing the 11 plus, and that means it's worth studying. Life contains things like that that you just have to do. Right, I'm going to wrap up in a second. Okay, here's a... let's finish with two questions. I'm born in September. I've heard that if you're born in June, July or August, they give you extra marks. What you're saying is that if you're basically people who are younger sitting grammar school exams can be given some extra credit for that. That does make a difference. It depends on the grammar school area, how it's worked out. It's out of your hands. Just don't worry about it. Go into the exam, do your best, and the marks will happen as they happen. And I think it's a pretty good rule for life not to spend time worrying about things that you can't affect. Focus on the things that you can make a difference with. How do you get the most out of books? I'm not sure whether you're asking out of books in general or out of my books. If it's how do you get the most out of my books, I think work with them slowly and carefully, spend a lot of time with the example answers, comparing them to your answers and thinking about how you could improve your answers or how you could make my example answers better. Spend some time with the walkthroughs, try to work out whether your way of analysing the question is similar to mine and see what ideas you can take, and then go back in and try the difficult questions again. So I think slowly and carefully with a lot of use of the answer pages. If you mean how do you get out the most out of books in general, there's so much I could say here, but I just want to say one thing. Try to enjoy them. Find books to read that you enjoy reading and that really inspire you and affect the way that you look at the world. And they will probably also be the books that about which you have the most intelligent ideas and the books that teach you the most in an academic sense. In my opinion, this is not there'll be lots of things you have to read that you don't like, but in a broad sense, I think life is too short to waste time on books that don't give you pleasure unless you have to read them because of school or university or whatever. So find the books that you like, but that also challenge you, and really devote yourself to those. And there are so many millions of books in the world. There will definitely be many books that do that for you. Okay, I'm going to wrap up there. That was a lot of questions I've just answered. And I'm sure you need to go away and have your tea or watch TV or do homework or something valuable like that. So thank you very much for watching. It's been wonderful to have you. I've enjoyed today despite the fact that it's been on non-verbal reasoning. I hope you have too. If you did enjoy it, please like and please subscribe to the channel and click the bell button. And I hope to see you back for my next Easy 11 Plus live lesson, which will be in 3 weeks' time on Tuesday evening. But in between, I'll be posting lots of pre-recorded Easy 11 Plus short lessons in the channel. So please look out for those. It's been a pleasure. See you soon. Bye-bye.